Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin in the UK, where stocks are on the rise after the Labour Party won a landslide victory in the general election as the party of outgoing Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak suffers a historic defeat. Let's get the latest from London with Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Stephen Carroll. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Keir Starmer says the Labour Party will start the next chapter for the UK. His party trounced the Conservatives, winning a majority of around 160 seats in a vote that's been seen as a referendum on 14 years of Tory rule. A record number of outgoing ministers lost their seats, as well as former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Keir Starmer brings his Labour Party back to power with a huge mandate and now must deliver on his promises to boost growth, build more homes and transition the UK to green power. In his words, change begins now. In London, Stephen Carroll, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Stephen, thank you. Well, according to the latest results, Labour won 400 of 650 seats, up for grabs, the most since Tony Blair's 1997 landslide victory. Incoming Prime Minister Keir Starmer declared victory in an address to supporters.
We did it! You campaigned for it, you fought for it, you voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now. And it feels good, I have to be honest.
Afterwards, Keir Starmer spoke with the man he will soon replace, Rishi Sunak. Sunak says he called the Labour leader to concede.
The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss.
And Rishi Sunak still comfortably won in his constituency, but will be replaced by Starmer as Prime Minister today. Let's take a look at the pound now, which notched its longest winning streak in 4 years as the Labour Party swept to power. Currently, it's higher against the dollar. It's at 1.2779.
Well, the other major part of this story, Karen, is the rise of the right-wing Reform UK party. Its leader, Nigel Farage, won his constituency from the Conservatives. He is becoming a member of Parliament after 7 previous failed attempts. Farage is seen as one of the driving forces behind the Brexit movement. Meanwhile, a former prime minister lost her seat. Liz Truss failed to win her constituency. Her premiership was the shortest in UK history. Chancellor of the Exchequer Jeremy Hunt was able to hold on to his seat.
We want to turn out of politics in the U.S., Nathan, and a make-or-break weekend for President Biden. The president's aiming to restore faith in voters and donors who are wary he can defeat Donald Trump in November. Polls from the Wall Street Journal and New York Times released after the debate showed Donald Trump has increased his lead over President Biden. The president will have a crucial interview with ABC News heading into the weekend in his first unscripted interview since his debate performance last week. He'll also address a rally in Madison, Wisconsin today. President Biden spoke yesterday morning with the Earl Ingram Show on Civic Media, admitting he made some missteps with the debate.
I had a bad night. And the fact of the matter is that, I screwed up. I made a mistake.
After speaking on the Earl Ingram Show on Civic Media, we later heard from the president at a July 4th event where he assured a crowd outside the White House that he was staying in the race.
You got me, man. I'm not going anywhere.
President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were hosting military families at the White House yesterday.
Well, Karen, most Democratic Party elders and prominent governors so far have resisted publicly calling on President Biden to drop out of the race, but they have also bluntly acknowledged they are worried. They say questions about his ability to handle the job are legitimate. Democrats dispatched California Governor Gavin Newsom to the swing state of Michigan to reassure voters there that President Biden can win a second term.
I believe in his character. I believe that he has been one of the most transformative presidents in our collective lifetime.
Well, despite comments from the likes of California's Governor Gavin Newsom, top Democratic donors have said they would withhold or redirect their money unless Biden does step aside, while lawmakers continue discussing whether to band together and call for a change atop the ticket.
Well, we're turning now to the latest in the Middle East, Nathan. There appears to be movement on a kind of truce between Israel and Hamas, and Bloomberg's Ed Baxter joins us with that story.
President Joe Biden has spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for about half an hour. And after the call, a senior U.S. official is saying that Hamas has broadly agreed to the framework of a ceasefire proposal with Israel. The Hamas response has come through Qatari officials who have served as a key intermediary between Israel and Hamas. The official says it's an encouraging development that could initially lead to the release from the Gaza Strip sick, wounded, female and older male hostages taken on October 7th. It appears to be significant enough that Israel is sending a delegation to negotiate in Qatar. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thanks. And we're learning this morning that the head of Israel's intelligence agency is traveling to Qatar today to meet with the nation's prime minister to try to finalize the deal with Hamas, and that's according to Israeli media.
Also happening overseas this weekend, Karen, will be the second round of voting in France's election. Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party is set to fall well short of an absolute majority in that vote on Sunday. That's based on surveys released over the past couple days. The second round of the snap election is on Sunday. 501 districts are up for grabs. The National Rally has secured 39 races outright in the first round. The election comes after French President Emmanuel Macron dissolved the lower house of parliament nearly a month ago and called for that snap vote.
Now to the markets. Nathan, investors resume a normal trading day after a shortened day Wednesday. We'll get a critical data point at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time with the June jobs report. And Bloomberg's Michael McKee has a preview.
It's hard to characterize the consensus for June employment, while other labor market indicators such as jobless claims, ADP, and ISM manufacturing and services suggest a cooling labor market. Economists are reluctant to bet against the non-farm payrolls trend. The forecast is almost the same as the May forecast, but hiring last month rose 272,000, almost 100,000 more. Fed officials, meanwhile, have put unemployment in the spotlight as a measure of the economy's strength. Any rise would push investors to pull forward bets on a rate cut, possibly in September. The consensus, however, sees no change. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Michael, thank you. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. A 4th of July park tragedy in New York City. Police say 3 people were killed and 7 others were injured when a suspected drunk driver plowed a vehicle into a park on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It happened just before 9 p.m. last night. NYPD Chief Jeffrey Madre says many families were in the park celebrating the holiday.
Right now, we do not feel like this is a terrorism-related event. We do believe that alcohol had played a role in this, but we are investigating and we will look further into it.
Chief Madre says at least 1 victim remains in critical condition. Hurricane Beryl is heading for Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula as a strengthened Category 3 storm. Beryl damaged Jamaica as more than half of the island is now without electricity. Adding to the crisis is a lack of water, limited telecommunications, and a closed airport. This Florida resident told ABC outside of Montego Bay Airport her dream vacation to the Caribbean has become a nightmare.
I got to get back to work. Funds are running out. And it's time to go home. Vacation's over. So we're going to spend more money to stay when we don't want to stay.
A total of 9 deaths have been blamed on Beryl. The National Weather Service is calling a heat wave hitting the West extreme and is telling people to limit time outdoors. It has been well over 100 degrees in many areas. Firefighters battling California's wildfires, however, are having to deal with the temperatures. Cities around the nation shot off 4th of July fireworks last night. In New York City, the Macy's 4th of July fireworks show returned to the Hudson River this year for the first time since 2013. The past few years, it was on the East River. Macy's says this year's show featured 60,000 shells. As millions gathered for 4th of July cookouts, many of the world's top eaters gathered on Coney Island for the annual Nathan's Famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest. This year's winner, Patrick Bertoletti, won the men's contest with an impressive 58 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Bertoletti talking with ESPN on his method to go for the gold this year.
It was all focused today, no mohawk, just hot water, and I wasn't going to stop eating until the job was done.
Meanwhile, last year's winner, Joey Chestnut, was barred from the Nathan's contest because of a sponsorship conflict. He participated at an Impossible Foods event with soldiers at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. The Mets lose to the Nationals 1-0 in Washington on this blast.
Swing by Winker to drive to deep right center field. This is way back. It's going. It's gone. Goodbye.
That's courtesy of WJFK Radio. Jesse Winker's eighth-inning home run off reliever Adrian Hauser was the only run of the game. Mets offense mustering just one hit as the Nats get 8 shutout innings from Jake Irvin. With the loss, Mets falling one game under 500. The Mets take on the Pirates tonight as they open a 4-game set in Pittsburgh, with Luis Severino facing the rookie Paul Skeens. The Yankees, meanwhile, have now lost 13 of their past 17 games as the Cincinnati Reds finish off a 3-game sweep with an 8-4 win in the Bronx. Marcus Stroman picking up the loss, giving up 5 runs in 5 innings. With the loss, Yankees falling 2.5 games behind Baltimore in the American League East. Yankees opening up a weekend series at home against the Red Sox tonight. Nestor Cortez on the mound facing Boston's Tanner Houck. Patrick Bertoletti wins the mustard belt at the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest in Coney Island, downing 58 dogs, beating Jeffrey Esper by 5. The 16-time champion Joey Chestnut did not compete due to dispute over a sponsorship deal. Meanwhile, Miki Sudo becomes a 10-time women's champion, eating a record 51 hot dogs. The Golden State Warriors have acquired guard Buddy Hield in a sign-and-trade with the Philadelphia 76ers. Hield gets a contract that guarantees 2 years and $21 million. Last season, the 31-year-old averaged just over 12 points a game for the Sixers and the Indiana Pacers. 2 big Euro 2024 quarterfinal matchups coming up later today as Spain faces host country Germany, with France taking on Portugal. Big upset at Wimbledon as 5th-seeded American Jessica Pegula loses in 3 sets to Wang Xinyu in the second round. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Dan Schwartzman, Nathan and Karen.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager. Change is coming to the UK. Labour leader Keir Starmer is set to become the next Prime Minister after winning a landslide victory, an outright majority in the House of Commons, handing Rishi Sunak's Conservatives their worst showing ever after his decision to call a surprise election in the summer. For more on this result, we are joined by Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Caroline Hepker, who has been following the reaction from Westminster. Caroline, good morning. This is a historic result, but not really a surprise, is it, given that the polls were pointing to a massive Labour lead?
No, but it is a damning verdict, isn't it, on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and indeed the 5 Conservative Prime Ministers that we've had over a 14-year period here in the UK. Rishi Sunak will give his final speech as Prime Minister in about 20 minutes' time after the worst defeat for the Conservative Party in 100 years. In the end, they only managed to muster 120 seats in the House of Commons, 650 seats overall. It was Labour who managed to secure 412 new MPs. The other story, though, that I would pull out of what has happened in the UK is very unusual, Nathan. Normally, we are basically a 2-party parliamentary system. But we've seen the resurgence of the Liberal Democrats, traditionally the third party in politics here in the UK. Also a big loss for the SNP up in Scotland. And then Nigel Farage, Trump's ally of Reform UK, he's been voted in along with a number of other colleagues for Reform UK. So this is a much more divided Britain in terms of the MPs that they have voted for, perhaps a confused Britain also because the turnout was very low, 100-year low in terms of the number of people who actually went out to vote.
So the turnout could belie then the huge majority that we do see for the Labour Party. What does that say about the convincing that Keir Starmer needs to do for that sizable majority of voters that did not turn out in this election, Caroline?
Well, this is absolutely going to be the question. How much of a mandate does the Labour leader have for perhaps going further than a very limited manifesto? So all the parties presented their manifestos in this very brief campaign. It's only last 6 weeks here in the UK. Labour's manifesto had very little, less than £10 billion in terms of tax and spending changes. Bloomberg Economics reported on it that actually they thought it would only add 0.1% of economic growth to the UK in the short to medium term. So it was really a very thin manifesto, not promising a huge amount. Now the question is, does the Labour Party go forward and have to deliver more? They have promised to do things like increase economic growth, deal with the backlog in NHS waiting lists, deliver 1.5 million new homes, whilst at the same time not increasing any of the major taxes. That was a firm pledge from them not to increase taxes on working people. So how are they going to do that? And as you say, because a lot of people did not turn out, the criticism this morning from some of the other leaders like Nigel Farage has been, actually, there's no great enthusiasm for Labour. It is simply that voters were so utterly sick and frustrated by the Conservative government that after 14 years delivered actually a drop in UK living standards.
So given that we have sort of a thin manifesto from Labour in our last minute, Caroline, what's the reaction from the business community? I know you've been gathering a lot of that as well from Westminster.
Absolutely. We've been speaking to the key business constituents, for example, the Confederation of British Industry, the Institute of Directors here in the UK. Look, they are hopeful. The CBI's Rain Newton-Smith told me that she wanted the Labour government to hit the ground running, and they want details. They want details of how the Labour government is going to learn the lessons of the last 14 years and try to deliver economic growth. There's been a big bit of outreach to business, which has convinced a lot of businesses from Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves that Labour is truly a change party and that they are pro-business. They want to combine with business to deliver on growth. But now it's about how quickly that comes. And I was speaking to a newly elected Labour MP just a few minutes ago. He was saying, firstly, there needs to be a complete audit of where the UK actually is and what fiscal room, the incoming government is going to have.
News from Wall Street to Washington and beyond. You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco. Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, Sirius XM channel.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
119, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.